Wise Child by Monica Furlong. Chapter 18, Juniper's Return. The caller was Coleman. When I recognized him, I flew to the door to let him in. He looked at me strangely. "What on earth's the matter with you? Where's Juniper?" I pulled him in and locked the door behind him. "You look awful," he said. Quickly, my eyes filling with tears, I told him the story of the stone and of Maeve. "Where is the stone?" "Out on the steps." "I want to listen to it." "But Maeve might get in," I wailed. "You can see anyone coming up the cliff path at least 100 yards away," he pointed out. "Plenty of time to get back in and lock the door." I allowed him to go out and pick up the stone, while I watched nervously from inside. I could not let him bring the stone back in, so he stood there holding it to his ear. I knew that the stone was working. I could hear its murmurs and hissing sibilants, even from where I stood. After holding it to his ear for a minute or two, he looked at me blankly. "Nothing. I can hear nothing," he said. He came back into the house, locked the door carefully behind him, and sat down. I could see that he was struggling with different orders of thought. "Do you think you could be mistaken?" he asked at last. No, I heard it. It might be your imagination." "I heard it," I said obstinately again. Again I felt some enormous struggle taking place in Coleman. A struggle maybe between the scornful, small boy who thought I was being silly, and the Coleman who loved me enough to know that my reality was not necessarily his. "You could come back home with me," he said doubtfully. We both knew what that meant, explanations to Gregor. Also, I had a scared anticipation of a meeting with Maeve on the cliff path. "I could stay here," he tried again. We both knew what that meant, too, a beating from Gregor. "Coleman, would you?" Coleman at once became peacock proud. "Of course, it's nothing. You can't stay here by yourself." "I could, but I'd rather not." Having another person there made it all quite different. The two of us lit the fire and started making a meal. We giggled a lot, as we always did, teased each other, talked about Coleman's brothers and sisters, about our plans for the future. At bedtime, we curled up in Juniper's big bed together. Somehow, the specter of Maeve returned to us as we lay there together in the dark. "If she has not arrived by now, do you think she is coming at all?" Coleman asked me. I knew that he was silently asking me, was she ever coming, or is the whole thing something like a story in your imagination? "I don't know," I said. "It seems so simple," he said. "You just don't open the door to her, and you stay put until Juniper gets back." "Bits of me want Maeve," I confessed. "Want to believe she loves me. Want to go and be with her." "Why? You know she doesn't love you. Not like Juniper does, anyway. Besides, you love living with Juniper." I felt ashamed of the truth, that in part I was still attracted to the life of luxury and ease I believed Maeve would give me, that even though I rather liked the thought of being a Doran, I was afraid of ending up as a Calic, like Juniper, that I did get sick of studying and churning butter and digging peat and cleaning the house and milking the cow and harvesting the herbs and learning lines and lines by heart, and all the 101 jobs that Juniper seemed to expect. So I repeated only half the truth. Bits of me still want Maeve. "She's not good to you," he said. "My mother says she was cruel to you when you were a tiny child." As he spoke, I felt a pain inside me, and I closed my fingers around the scar on my palm where I was trying to remember something that I did not want to remember. Finbar said you must never live with her again. If she was cruel to you once, she might be so again. Why would she be? Some people enjoy it. You have to keep out of their way if there's nothing else you can do to stop them. There was a long silence between us. I was sore and angry with him for what he had just said. Mostly when people are called wicked, Coleman went on, they don't seem to be, you know, the sort of people Philin thinks are wicked. But if there are wicked people, I think Maeve might be one of them. I just feel it. The tears slipped freely down my cheeks onto the pillow. I wanted to shout, "Maeve is my mother," but I knew that I could not defend her. Soon Coleman fell asleep, so I was left to my painful thoughts. I tossed and turned, tormented by wanting Maeve and not wanting her, by the fear of her arrival, by half-memories of a fire that frightened me, by the dread of cruelty and wickedness. Just as I felt that I could not bear my own mind a moment longer, it was as if someone had touched my burning brow with a cool hand, caressing it. At that very moment came the memory of Juniper's talisman, to which I had never given a thought since Juniper had left. I slipped quietly out of bed, went to the dresser, put my hand under the clothes, and suddenly felt the satiny touch of silver. I heaved a sigh of peace, of relaxation, even as I touched it. I pulled it out and looked at it. I could see it quite clearly in the moonlit room, and I carried it to where the moon's beams rested on it. As if from habit with the stone, I lifted it to my cheek, but the talisman sang no song, spoke no rhymes, simply rested in my hand as if it was a perfect fit there. I climbed back into bed, still holding it, and fell asleep almost at once. Presently I woke to Coleman standing over me. I must go now. Dad may not know I wasn't home with a bit of luck. I'll see you soon. Take some bread with you, I said, and went back to sleep. When I woke again, it was sunrise, the eerie half-light of the dawn. I woke because someone out in the garden was calling my name. Wise child, wise child. I knew at once who it was, and I got up unhesitatingly. I went to the window and opened it, and there, standing out among the flower beds, was Maeve. She was wearing the same clothes she had worn the last time I saw her, and her long, golden-red hair was about her shoulders, though only a ghost of itself in that eerie light, as was Maeve herself. She was holding Bran by his bridle. To my surprise, I no longer felt afraid. "What do you want?" I asked in a firm voice. "You summoned me," she said. "Bran and I have come to take you away to the life of a princess and a lady." "I cannot go anywhere without asking Juniper," I said, "nor without Finbar's consent." "Finbar," she said in a voice of contempt. "He will never return." "Yes, he will." "But in any case, you summoned me." "I was wrong to do so. I felt lonely, but I want to live with Juniper." "Where is Juniper, the old enemy of mine?" I did not feel like answering that. It was obvious enough that she wasn't there, but all the same I did not want to say so. "This is your chance to get away without a fuss. She'd never let you if she was at home. Bran grieves for you." "I'm not coming." "Well, at least come out into the garden to greet your mother, whom you summoned on this long journey." I could feel the old longing begin to rise in me. More than anything in the world, I longed to run down and out into the garden barefoot and in my nightdress and fling myself into Maeve's arms. What stopped me, I think, was a sort of distraction. It was that the talisman in my hand had become burning hot, so hot that I had to hold it gingerly by its edges. I cannot come with you or talk with you unless Juniper says I may. If she says it is all right, then I will do it. Maeve's face seemed to close in on itself. We are a good little girl, aren't we? She said scornfully, and I could feel an old pain stir in me. I'm going back to bed now. I shut the window deliberately, padded across the floor to the bed, and got back into it, still clutching the talisman. The calling began then. To start with, I could hear Maeve, out in the garden, calling my name in a high, piercing voice that gradually grew higher and higher, almost like a whistle, until it seemed as if it rang right through my head, rinsing my eardrums with its intolerable sound. Then it was as if the voice was in the room with me, under the bed, up in the high corner of the ceiling, in the middle of the dresser, muffled under the clothes. From out of my empty nest, from the window, from the candle stand, I began to tremble violently. Then the pulling sensations began, as if someone was taking my limbs one by one and stretching them until they went into spasm. I grew very hot until the perspiration ran down me, and then very cold until my teeth chattered and I shook as if I was out in a heavy frost. I shook so much that I could hear the legs of the bed rattling on the floor beneath me, a drumming sound that was in itself disturbing and seemed to herald a new and unwelcome stage of torment. The drumming on the floor continued even after I had stopped shaking, and then there was a series of clicks and clucks from all over the room, as if the walls, the ceiling, and the furniture were trying to speak to me. Then an extraordinary sense of vertigo seized me. The bed seemed to be spinning on a tiny platform in space, and all around it there was nothing. Sick and terrified, I hid my face, but I could feel the platform tipping. And then I was no longer in my room, but deep in the underground cavern, staring up at that terrible painting of the devil. But even as I stared, I became part of the painting, the girl held in the dreadful claw, helpless to escape, and the face of the devil was the face of Maeve. In that terrible moment, time stood still. Then gradually, the sounds and the sensations died away, and I could see the sky, a fresh daffodil yellow outside the window in Juniper's house. I thought I could hear someone shouting in the garden. Then there were running steps on the stair, the door flew open, and there was Juniper's beloved face. Wise child. The tone of her voice covered a whole range of love, concern, understanding, sympathy, sorrow, and knowledge of what I had just gone through. I don't remember much about the rest of that day, except that a lot of the time I seemed to be sitting on Juniper's lap. Coleman was here, I said once in a voice like a stranger's. He stayed the night, but he had to go before. Juniper nodded gravely. It was the stone, you see. It kept talking to me. It said that she was coming, and then I got frightened and I bolted all the doors, and then Coleman came, and then eventually she did come. Yes, she did. Coleman couldn't hear the stone. He thought I was being silly. I didn't remember about the talisman until last night. Then I took it out and held it. Where is the stone now? On the front steps, unless Maeve took it. How did you get the stone? That first time I saw her, before, she gave it to me. My voice faltered, but I continued. So I brought it home, and because I knew you wouldn't like the idea, I hid it. My voice got fainter. It was so pretty, At first I forgot all about it, but then I kept taking it out and looking at it until gradually I couldn't leave it alone. I see. As usual, Juniper offered neither blame nor rebuke. My poor wise child. And she stroked my hair gently, and I left you all alone with it, the summoning stone, as it's called. People know about it? It seemed less alarming if it had a name. Some people know about it. You see, it gave Maeve power over you, which she wouldn't have had otherwise. Well, not like that. I knew that I must tell her the hard thing. But you see, I used it to summon her. To begin with, I really wanted her to come, because I wanted to have an easy life again and ride on Bran and all that. Then Coleman said she would be cruel to me and other things, and it made it easier to refuse. I could see that I was better off here, so I didn't go. Are you better off here? Juniper asked with a hint of a laugh in her voice. I felt ashamed that with all her love and care for me, I had wanted to run away from her a second time, and I hung my head, so she answered for me. I make you work very hard, and sometimes it's boring and you miss other children. And though you would like to be a Doran sometimes, at other times you don't like the idea at all. I know it's difficult, but I do think it is better for you than living with Maeve, or I'd let you go this very day. Bear with me a few years longer, or at least until Finbar returns. Grow bigger and stronger, and all kinds of things might be possible. As for Maeve, who can say what she intends if